Let's go, guys. Well, welcome to season 2, episode 30 of Baseline Tech Talk Tuesday. I was just reviewing. This is actually our 61st episode. So we're mirrored our first season already. We're 30 episodes in, and you can catch all the replays if you're joining us for the first time on YouTube. The handle is Baseline Web Training, all one word. On YouTube, every episode we've done, all Dan's how-to videos, and there's great content to share with your contractors, your customers for troubleshooting, learning how to set stuff up. YouTube is quickly becoming the place to go to learn all of that, as well as how to replace the pump in your washing machine. No, just kidding. That too.
I referenced that. How to fix a dryer.
How to fix a dryer. How to replace your doorknob. Quick intros. I'm Andy Humphrey, Irrigation Technology Consultant for Baseline. We have Chris Wright, VP of Sales, and Dan Conger, our Training Manager. And we're going to run through some BaseManager recent updates. We're going to go through some maps. We're going to go through MobileAccess today and kind of some tips and tricks that we use and a couple things that are new for it. So with that, Dan, take us off.
Cool. Yeah. So today I wanted to talk about MobileAccess and how that interacts with BaseManager maps. There's a real connection between there because they're all the same data set. And there's a lot of times when I work with new customers, I find a lot of people have not set up their maps.
I know, it's crazy, right? And we've got a number of large users that have a huge network of controllers, and you go into their account and go to either their company page or even their site page, and maps just aren't set up.
Yeah. And just a quick reminder, guys, no one says you have to do all this for free, right? You can build a model to charge your either end user client, add it to a bid. If it's not called out what you should do in BaseManager, you can put in a potential request, change, et cetera, because no one says you have to go do all this work for free.
Right. Yeah. So in order to get to MobileAccess, I want to spend some time in BaseManager first. So let's jump into that one and take a look at BaseManager. And let me do my login. So I want to take a look at BaseManager maps. So, I'm logging into App Manager, but really I'm after BaseManager and the maps associated with that. So let's log into BaseManager. And I'm going to get to the right controller because I have a couple of different controllers I have here. So I want the training class. Oh, this works. Okay. So this is what I often see. We see this generic US satellite map.
Well, it's the default map.
You're right. It is. That's what we see so much of it, right?
Yeah. And it's intended to be set up and customized for the site and for the user. But if you log in and you see all of the United States, you're like, that isn't much of a map interface, right?
Right. And there's a couple. So I want to go through a quick setup of this one, but there's several different levels. So let's tweak the company level. And for this one, I have to click Edit. And my company that I'm going to set up is in the Western US. And my company has 2 sites that I'm going to use. I have a Las Vegas site and a San Diego site, but the roadmap works better for me. So I'm going to change to roadmap, but you could change to whatever level works well for you. Then I'm going to add my markers and I'm going to add my sites. So my first site is my demo site. And I'm going to put that here in San Diego where I am. And my training class, I'm going to put in Las Vegas. So I'm going to save this. So when I log in, I will be able to see both sites at this level and I won't have to zoom or pan around, right? So I'm going to save this because I want it to come back to this level. Now, if I had 20 sites, I would set the zoom level appropriate to see all 20 sites. Mm-hmm. If you're a city, you're probably going to set your company level to your entire city limits.
Correct. Yep.
Beautiful. Okay. Next step in is my current site. So, and I switched my sites around, but let's switch sites. I want my other site. Sites and training class. Okay. So my current site. So this one I'm going to also edit. And I mix. So now I can adjust these a little bit, right? So if I'm going to zoom in to where my site is, and I'm in the San Diego metro area. So I'm not actually downtown San Diego. I'm actually north of there, here I am, I'm up this way. So I'm just going to zoom in until I find my site. And what makes it really easy is my site is near the lake. And it is, there it is. It's right near a regional shopping mall. And it's this high school. So I'm going to be using.
Wait a minute. I think you just panned over Stone Brewery in Escondido.
I did. That's up on this corner. Right. I did.
Yeah. I know my maps.
You do. So my site level, I'm going to get to, I wanted to show this entire site. So that's probably a little too close. So I'm going to go back out one. Now my site level, I'm going to set my two different controllers because this site has two controllers. So let's go to markers, and I'm going to add the controller. So I've got two different controllers on the site. So I've got one controller and another controller. And one controller is this portion of the campus, and the other controller covers the ball fields. And that controller is kind of on that border between those two. So now when I save this, this takes me to the site level, but this takes me to the controller level. But let's look at the map. We'll see what that looks like when it's all done. So this is showing my two controllers and my site level. If I had 10 controllers on the site, I'd place all 10 here. Okay, so we're going to the current controller. Well, this doesn't do me any good. So let's edit this and zoom back into my current controller. And I often forget I start just scrolling and zooming and forget I got to be in edit mode to make this work. So what we want, let's grab my controller. It's actually down here. So I can fine tune the controller. So the controller actually is on the south edge of the grandstands. And I think this is going to show me most everything what I want it to do. Okay, so now I've got the controller. This is where I think most people are going to do most of their map work, but you got to have it zoomed to the right level. Mm-hmm. So markers. So a lot of times we definitely want to start with zones. So let's go into my zones. And this is a really small training configuration. So let's add my zones. And I've got a manifold here, so I can just click on these and add them together. So I've got two zones in a manifold. And then let's come over to put these zones over here in the manifold. So just click on them. And then if I make a mistake on one of these, and it's definitely not at second base. So I can click on that and drag it where it belongs. Now,
and how close can you zoom in?
That's my final zoom right there. That's the last of it.
Right. So oftentimes you can zoom in close enough to actually get a visual on where a valve box is, or a backflow, or where the controller location is.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah. So you can actually start to see, some small, fine objects in here, but definitely I don't want it zoomed in this tight, because if I save it at this level, it'll come back every single time. And I'm like, well, every single time I'll start zooming out. Now, here's something to point out. I put zones 1 and 2 right where the valve boxes are, because the valve boxes, there's two valves right next to the manifold. Well, I can't tell which is 1 and 2. So here's another strategy. One that I kind of prefer is I prefer placing markers in the general areas that they're irrigating. So we got right, left, and center field, 8, 9, and 10. And that tells me that if I hit 8, the zones in that general area will turn on, and the same with 9 and 10.
Yep.
So when I zoomed out, it makes sense.
As we do this process, what's the primary advantage to doing this?
Well, let's save it and I'll show you why.
Why do we want to do it?
Yeah, it's about the zone control. There we go. So I can come to zone 10, and I don't have to have zone 10 named at all. I just look at zone 10 and I can start it. So the default is 10 minutes, but I'm going to change it to 5. And in just a moment, zone 10 will actually turn on and turn to blue. Right. So there's a big advantage there. Or I can come to a zone and test it. and find out about the status of the solenoid. Wow, device, no response. I've got a problem on this one. I better go out and see what's going on the field. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think at the base level, what you get is an at-a-glance status of what is going on with your controller at any given time when you log into it, right? Without having to go in zone by zone to see which zone is running. You can see at a glance, based on the area that's being irrigated, what color your icons are, and know which zones are running concurrently or independently. And then you can verify that against flow values too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And schematically, it makes more sense sometimes than looking at it in quick view, which is a grid, doesn't tell you where those zones are located. So seeing that schematically on the map, makes sense, especially for a user that might not be as in tune with where all these zones are. Some end users don't know that information, so they can look at the map and they can get a clear picture.
Yeah,
well, that's a good point, Andy, because if I'm on site, I know that valve 1 might be right next to zone 22. I know that because I have the site memorized. But you manage 4 sites. You're my boss. You come in and you look at this controller. Because I'm on vacation, you need to deal with it. This map might be really, really valuable to you rather than the quick view or word description.
We know every contractor knows where every pipe is in every valve box because it's in their brain. But as you move up towards the end user, that information starts to get lost a little bit along the way.
True.
Right. Absolutely. So let's go back. So in edit mode, there's other markers we can add. So we could fill this out with zone markers. And then I don't have my master valve. So I'm going to add my master valve. And I only have 1 in here. So this will be really easy. And that's down at this end. And then let's add my flow sensor. And I only have 1 flow sensor. So again, naming devices and naming them makes a big difference, right? So going into the devices tab, naming devices make it so much easier because these aren't particularly named well.
And Dan, let's take a quick look at that list, because if there's anybody on this call that hasn't been into the map view for a while, there are new devices that weren't on that list a year ago.
Yeah,
sure.
Good point.
Yeah, so I'm working in zones and master valves, but
like over on the on the markers list.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I misunderstood. Let's go back to. This is one of those tricks when we're both trying to do the same thing. Okay, so we've got, well, right here at the top, we've got substation remote valves, and substation control points. That's really new.
Yeah. Yep. So that was just recently added within like the last 4 to 6 weeks, I think, in the 4.3 role. Right. So now we can place markers either on the controller map or on the site map of where substations are located and or flow stations.
Beautiful. You're right. So now I can look at the map and see which zones are physically connected to the 3200 and which are physically connected to the substation.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I also see on there pressure sensors and tipping rain buckets, tipping rain bucket being, the precip sensor. Where is the tipping rain bucket or the precip sensor located on the site? Right.
Yeah, this one doesn't have one. My other site has one, but yes, absolutely. Especially if you need to go service it, knowing where it is really important.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure sensors have been in there for a while too. And before we had those, which is why I was working to the master valve and flow sensor to get other devices on there that don't have unique baseline serial numbers, it's a custom marker. Mm-hmm. So custom markers, I'm going to add we use a cross-connection device, a backflow preventer here in California. So I'm going to add that. And I don't have that yet. So I'm going to create a custom marker. And this one I'm going to name it's an RP for reduced pressure assembly. And this is a 2-inch backflow device. And then I'm going to put that it was last serviced. I'm going to put its last service date.
And Dan, I want to mention one pro tip that you could use for this. If the service record were, let's say, in a Google Doc, a Google Sheet, Google Doc, or any third party, you could put the URL right there. And then from that pin, you can link directly to that service information. So if you're using any other third-party application that's web-based or online, you can put the URL in there and just directly access that information.
You think that URL is going to get me anywhere? Google.com.
Just google.com if you want to test it.
1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. You got to be careful what they bring up.
Yeah. So we have all these new software companies that are out there, making best in class software, pictures and, tree inventory, all this kind of stuff. And you can create custom markers and link right to that software.
So custom markers is a two-step process, right? I've created the custom marker. Now I'm going to add the custom marker to the map. And that's where my device lives. So as I pointed out earlier, right, we can start zones, we can test them from clicking on them. Same with my flow meter, I could test it or get the flow rate. But when I click on the RP, I can't actually run a backflow device, which makes sense. But there's Andy's link, right, to google.com or to whatever. Maybe it's a parts list. Maybe it's to a Google Doc.
Yeah, maybe you're using a Smartsheet or an Airtable or, any real software that gives you a public URL, Dropbox, box.com, you name it. You can link in there and then access those documents.
Yeah.
Or link it to the website of whoever it is does your backflow service.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And you only have one link?
Per pin, one link.
Yes.
You could put it down in the notes, but then you would have to copy and paste it. It wouldn't be a hyperlink.
Or you could create a link down in here, and it's not for a device. It could just be site notes. That would be another place to store it.
Could be.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to get out of this for the moment because I want to show you another way of creating these pins in a quicker way. So give me just a minute.
Let's before we move on, got a couple of questions, right?
Beautiful.
So one question was, can this be done on a phone or just on a computer? So it can be done on a phone in BaseManager view.
Correct.
And it can also be done in MobileAccess view where you're placing the pins, which Dan will show you in a moment. So yes, you can do it on a phone as well as on a computer or a tablet. The other question is there a way to put a substation on its own map rather than the 3200 map? So yes, you can put the substation on the site map, which would not be on the controller map. So you would know where its location is, right? But substation is an extension of the 3200. So you would likely want to know where that is in conjunction to the controller on the controller map.
Yep. And now the controllers nest under the substation. So when you look at sites on the left-hand side, they're all nested under the controllers.
Yep.
Yeah. So did you notice I just logged myself out there accidentally because I logged myself in here. So I've got my phone. I just logged in on my phone so that only one, I'm using the same login so that one person can only be logged in once per device. So on App Manager on my phone, I'm not going to go to BaseManager as Chris mentioned. That would be the place I could do that, but I'm going to do it in MobileAccess. So MobileAccess, this will bring up my sites and controller. So that's a training class, and the S123 is the controller I'm working on. So, we talked about earlier in another episode, I think it was season 2, episode 7. We talked about some of the things you could do. You could manually run zones. You could test devices through MobileAccess, but this Geolocate feeds right into that map feature. So Geolocate, I'm going to geolocate a zone, and here's my list of zones, and I'm going to just locate zone 11. It's down at the bottom. So I've got the accuracy. I'm going to wait for the accuracy to improve, but outside will do better. It'll probably get 16 to maybe 8 feet of accuracy outside. We'll get pretty decent accuracy for what I'm doing out there. But I've got that. Now I'm not going to wait for it. I'm going to hit mark. But notice in the upper right corner what pops up. The GPS coordinates are there, right? So it's placing this marker on my map right now in real time. So let's do 11 and let's do 10. So I placed 10 and 11 right next to each other here in my office. Okay, so now we can also, under Geolocate, we can do that same custom markers. So under custom markers, I can actually create a custom marker in the field while I have my phone in hand and speed up that process. So here's how I would recommend using this, right? As you walk up to zone 10 with your phone in hand, geolocate, mark. Walk to zone 11, phone in hand, geolocate, mark, and you're putting them on the map real time as you're walking the site.
Yep. And Dan, we had a good question. We mentioned this earlier, and it's probably a 50-50 split. Do users like to drop the zone markers on the valve boxes or in the area that's being watered? Maybe the three of us should just give our opinion on what we see. So you already mentioned it, Dan. You do the area.
I like the area.
Yep. I see the area quite a bit.
Likewise. Yep. But I also see maps where they're dropped where the valve location is.
Yep.
So
and it might be that
preference.
Other devices, controllers, pumps, precip sensors, things like that go as close to accurate as possible. And then the zone pin goes in the area.
Or a third idea would be use a custom marker to mark manifolds, not valves, but manifolds, and use that since you can't interact with it, but then the area that you're irrigating with an interactive pin.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So I could do this with every device we have. So let's jump back to the map. So I'm going to need to log out of this, and we'll move this off my screen. We'll bring my browser back. And I want to show you what that looks like with those pins on the map. Now, keep in mind, I'm not at the high school. I'm in my office.
Really?
Can you? I could have done the green screen today, and
right, which is in New Mexico, right?
That's it. That's where the groupies are. Okay, let's jump in.
Let's see. We're gonna find out where Dan's office is, aren't we?
I gotta wait.
Somebody better screen capture this quick.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the map. So we've got our current company, our current site, okay, and then our current controller. Oh man, did I not save it right? I didn't save it. Okay, well, that's okay. Let's zoom in. There's my current controller. We can see the campus site, but my marker is way up here. So I put it there in my office. So I'm probably 5 miles away from the site that I'm using in my example. So my markers actually were placed here. So if I thought about, could I walk down the street and do this? And I think we get the idea of it without getting into too much detail. But my geolocate placed it up here.
Notice how he's not zooming in close enough to determine where he lives.
I'm not.
I want to see if it's within 16 feet of your office.
Oh, don't make no. See, this goes online too. Then I don't need people knowing on YouTube, knowing where I live.
Uh-huh. All right. Very cool.
So so I really like this idea of using geolocate to speed up this process. And one that I try and pitch people in my training classes is, hey, I'm gonna drive the cart, and Andy's just gonna sit in the passenger seat, and we're gonna drive this site, right? We're gonna real quickly knock out the map, but also Chris could be back in the office taking those pins and adjusting them real time. As soon as we're done, as soon as we mark it, he could go back in and fine tune it. So I think you could kind of mix and match, right? You take your memory and then what you have on the site based off of your accuracy and use those. Then have a fully interactive map with devices, custom markers, and everything on there to really speed up your process and make it work for you.
So you're saying because you wouldn't participate and zoom in close enough to see where your office actually is, if you do mark in the field from MobileAccess and it shows up on the map and it's not quite as accurate as you want it, it's not a permanent mark.
Oh,
right?
No, right.
You can unlock the map, edit the map, zoom in, and then drag and drop that marker exactly where you want it.
Exactly right. Right. If you got it, if you went with my strategy of the area that you're irrigating, that accuracy isn't nearly as critical. But if you're marking valve boxes, that might be something that would be a little bit more important to you.
Yeah.
Depends on how you're using it.
Well, and it also depends, the accuracy depends on how good the cell signal is in the area when you're doing that drop from your phone in the field as well. So you may need to make some fine-tune adjustments.
Yep.
Absolutely correct. Right.
So very cool. All right. So, obviously there's some real power and efficiencies that come from using the maps when interfacing with BaseManager. We are continually, as an engineering group, making enhancements and improvements to the product to enhance user experience, right? Last weekend, we did a BaseManager update where we changed the way that the schedules tab behaves in BaseManager. So maybe if you pull up your screen,
let's see that, Dan.
General BaseManager, we can show what the advantage is with the change that we made.
And this request really is, came from our users, looking for a better, faster, more streamlined experience.
Yep. So,
but Chris, I haven't updated the firmware on my controller.
It's not a firmware update. Right.
This is a BaseManager.
It's a BaseManager role. So
wow, do that again, Dan. I think it happened so quickly we missed it.
I know, exactly. So previously, when you clicked on the schedules tab, you would get the spin wheel, right? As BaseManager connected to the controller, retrieved its current configuration, and then displayed it in BaseManager in the schedules tab. So we've re-architected it so that we speed up that process. When you click on the schedules tab and then click on a particular program, it's going to load the database that was previously saved so that we don't have to wait for that connection to the controller. Then you can do your editing and changes. And then when you save that, it'll send it to the controller. And it just greatly enhances the speed at which you can make changes. And then also takes quite a bit of load off of the BaseManager server so it works more efficiently for everybody that may be using it at a given time. So I know, Mr. White, that is an awesome enhancement for you because the amount of time that you spend in your schedules tab and on a daily basis in changing some of your percentages associated with your primary zones, et cetera. So this is a massive time saver for those that are managing multiple sites with large configurations.
Yep. The more zones, the more devices, the longer it took to spin it up and load it. So
yep. So now the schedules tab performs like the flow setup tab, which we did the same re-architecture on a couple months ago to again increase that speed and response time to get you in and get you editing and programming faster and more efficiently.
Yeah, Chris, I think it's just important to remind everyone of these little things because the engineering team is starting to roll out little changes more frequently that if you're not paying attention, you just won't see and you won't know. So this is a great time for us to just remind and refresh and let everybody know that there's stuff happening behind the scenes all the time.
All the time. Yep, for sure. And we're always listening to the field, taking your input, improvements, complaints, frustrations and tweaking things to make it work better and to make the user interface more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, all right, we are at the bottom of the half hour. So again, we've blown through 30 minutes and we will
we had a good quick question though, or
yeah, I just saw that come up.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So the question is, what if there are changes made at the controller? Does it automatically go to BaseManager? And the answer is yes, in essentially real time. So I can't tell you the time, but it's just about real time.
Yeah, it's we did a load test on it last Saturday after the release. Internally, we all got on. We were making changes at BaseManager, walking to the controller to see how fast it replicated, and then again making changes at the controller, seeing how fast they'd show up in BaseManager, and it was, like Andy said, near real time. So,
yep. And if you're running a self-hosted server, we haven't touched those. So you still have the very same self-hosted server until someone from Baseline provides an update. It's the same server.
Correct. Yep. Very cool. All right, let's depart. Let everybody get back to work and engaged in their day. And we will not see you next week following the Labor Day holiday, but the week after. I don't know what date that would be. I think it's the 13th. So let's plan on that, and we will reconvene then. Thanks for joining us, taking the time. Go out, work hard, be safe, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you all.
Then.
Take care.
Bye.